Hi, and welcome to another GDR Objectified field trip. Whenever I travel, I like to try to find spots, sites, that in some way evoke the memory of East Germany. Now, this is more easily done, obviously, in a place like, say, Germany. But 25 years after the fall of the wall, even there it's becoming increasingly hard to find those places. Today I find myself in Montreal, Canada, and I'd like to take us to a site that I discovered a few years ago that does an amazing job of evoking the German Democratic Republic. So, thanks for joining me, and we ready to go? So I have come to Pius IX subway station in East End, Montreal, because this is the stop directly adjacent to the city's Olympic Park. In 1976, the city hosted the Summer Olympic Games, and I was a young boy at the time. I had rather vivid memories of the Games. Unfortunately, those memories do not include any Canadians scaling to the top of the medal podium, because Canada distinguished itself at those Games by becoming the only host of a modern Summer Games not to win a gold medal. I'm standing in front of Montreal's Olympic Stadium, an appropriate place to tell you that not every nation underachieved at the 1976 Olympics. In fact, for East Germany, the 76 Games was their high water mark. In 1972, the team had really established itself as part of the world sporting elite by taking third place at the Munich Games. Here they stood just behind the Soviets and the Americans in the medal count, but most importantly to the East Germans, they eclipsed the West German hosts. And they eclipsed them by a considerable measure. The East Germans hauled in 66 medals at the 72 Games in Munich. The West Germans managed only 40. And here in Montreal, 4 years later, that gap widened considerably. The East Germans climbed to second in the overall medal standings with 90. 40 of those were gold. The West Germans again managed fourth place, but this time the distance had widened to 51 medals. So Montreal was really the pinnacle of East German sporting success. So this is it. We're here. This is the site I was telling you about that evoked the GDR for me so strongly. This is the Court of Honor, built in 1986 and dedicated by none other than the Olympic chief Juan Antonio Samaranch to the winners of the 76 Olympic Games that had taken place 10 years previously. But here the GDR flag flies with the other nations that competed. We see the disappeared flag of the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, several other East Bloc nations. And on all of the bronze plaques, the names of the GDR athletes who were successful at these games are engraved. So there's an element of time standing still here. I have to say, however, that what I've encountered here today sort of counters that quite nicely. Time, it turns out, waits for no one, not even the GDR Objectified. So when I was last here, there was no planetarium in the background, and this building fence, work fence, was not here, obviously, and there was much more sense of I guess, past time than we find here today. In my collection, I have a number of items that are souvenirs, mementos related to the East German team's participation in the 76 Olympics. First of these that I'd like to present is this pennant of the DTSB, the Deutscher Turn- und Sportbund der DDR, the German Gymnastics and Sporting Association of the GDR. The reason this item has any significance, this was the umbrella organization charged with organizing East German high-performance sport, and its director, Manfred Ewald, was a rather notorious figure in East Germany and the sporting world generally. was later convicted after unification of being an accessory in the doping of 22 East German female athletes without their knowledge. He received a sentence of 22 months on probation. And to give you a sense of his place in the East German sport pantheon, his memoir, which was released in 1994, was titled Ich war der Sport, I was sport. So a man with no lack of self-esteem. The other items that I have are some stamps. So the East Germans, this will probably come as no surprise, we're very keen on putting out commemorative stamps. I have a set of 6 of the Olympic stamps from 1976. Fittingly, given the myopia of East Germany, its focus on itself, these stamps all feature Olympic sporting venues. Unfortunately, they're all Olympic standard sporting venues found in the GDR, not at the Montreal Games. So somehow it fits with the GDR's worldview very, very well. Of my Olympic mementos from the 76 Games, probably my favorite, however, is this book here. So it's a coffee table book designed to commemorate the 76 Games, put out by an East German publishing house. This kind of book was a very common item in East Germany. This was a society where the state and the party were constantly looking to reward its loyal citizens, and book prizes were very common. And so this type of book found its ways into the hands of many, many GDR citizens, and as a result is now available in flea markets and used bookstores all over Germany. I got my copy recently for €1. Reading through it, it's what you would expect. It's a glossy, high-gloss overview of the 76 Games with a particular emphasis on the East German successes, of which there were many. But there's also often a political tinge to most of the texts. Each of the disciplines has their own essay or reportage, and the writers typically leave no opportunity unturned to vilify the Americans or to somehow praise the GDR's social system or to find a positive quote about GDR athletes that appeared in international press, so that type of thing, nothing too surprising. Of course, any discussion of East German sporting success has to be seen through the lens of the historical record. And as we now know, East Germany had a highly developed system for doping its high-performance athletes. At the Montreal Games, it appears that virtually every member of the team was being doped to achieve top performance. And going through this book, reading some of the texts with that knowledge, makes for what I would consider, what I found to be very uneasy reading. Anecdote that's related in here that really gives a good sense of the attitude of East German sporting officials towards sport and their athletes is the recounting of an exchange between a West German reporter and 2 representatives of the East German women's swim team. Poster children for the games, for the success, but also the targets of a lot of suspicion. The physiology of many of these women had been greatly changed by the doping. They were very large, and another byproduct of that doping, the steroids, was lowering of their voices. So at this press conference, a West German reporter asks the head of the women's swim team about this, and he says, well, of course, it's well known that there are many beautiful women around the world with alto voices, so in and of itself, this is not so unusual. And when the reporter continues along this line, one of the coaches jumps in with the comment, "The girls are here to swim, not to sing." General mirth ensues amongst the gathered press, but as we now know, those girls, and in many cases they really were girls, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, were all being doped. Extremely high levels of steroids and great health risks being taken there. Also the cynicism that's displayed by this official, this encapsulates quite nicely the attitude of East German sporting officials. Their athletes were there to win. The party would determine the risks, what was an acceptable risk, and really the bottom line was simply to perform at whatever cost. The East German doping program was remarkable by virtually any measure. It was overseen by the highest political levels, approved by the Politburo, and run by a team of doctors who administered steroids and male growth hormone to East German athletes in all Olympic disciplines. A research center dedicated only to improving East Germans' athletic performance was set up to support this. The research done there determined the maximum dosage of these drugs that could safely be given to the athletes, and also assessed each individual's ability to metabolize or pass these substances so that the maximum dosage could be given as close as possible to testing, to trials, to competition, so that no advantage was left untaken. The logistics for the East German doping program at the Games were quite intricate. They smuggled the necessary supplies, the steroids and the hormones and the syringes, etc., into Canada using diplomatic pouches. Once here, team doctors set up shop in one of the apartments in the Olympic Village that's behind me. And basically there they ran a doctor's office, injecting their athletes up to the very last possible minute with all the performance-enhancing substances they could. The East Germans' doping program had a particular effect on its female athletes. The male growth hormone in particular had incredible effects on their physiology. East German women took gold in 11 of the 13 women's swim events here at the Games, and they took a total of 18 medals home with them. Now, the narrative these days is very much, of course they were doping, everyone knew it, and there certainly were suspicions at the time, but not everyone was convinced. Canadian coach Byron McDonald, whose swimmers finished 3rd, 4th, and 5th behind the East Germans in one event, is quoted as saying, 15 years ago, "Sure, it was unusual and we wondered what was going on, but we really thought maybe they were just training better than we were." Another notable Olympic hero created at these Games for the GDR was one Waldemar Cierpinski, a complete unknown going into Montreal. He was a converted steeplechaser who won one of the Games' most prestigious events, the marathon, beating a heavily favored American in the process. Of course, this would have endeared him to the GDR regime, and he was stylized as quite the Olympic hero. An interesting note about Cierpinski's success here, he apparently inspired the East German men's team to achieve its gold medal. There's a story that its captain and goalkeeper Jürgen Kroy invoked Cierpinski's success in less than flattering ways in his pre-game speech to his fellow teammates by saying, "If such a living example of mediocrity as Cierpinski can get a gold, surely we can do the same." And it seems to have done the trick. The team went out and beat Poland 3-1, capturing the gold and achieving the only notable international success for the GDR national soccer team in its entire existence. Standing here at the Olympic Park with the stadium behind me, the rings, the flame, and just looking at the general aesthetics of this place with its mixture of protocol, pomp, and concrete, I can't help but think that Eric Honecker would have loved this place. I'm sitting on the banks of the St. Lawrence River because it was here that at the end of the Summer Games, a group of Stasi officers that had accompanied the team chartered a boat, not for a pleasure cruise to celebrate a job well done, but rather to dispose of 10 suitcases of medical waste that had been created in the course of doping the GDR's Olympic team. I keep an eye out for those suitcases on eBay, but alas, so far, no luck. From Montreal, this has been a GDR Objectified field trip. Thanks for watching.